we have culture, we have music, and we have a wonderful heritage in this country. We do, don't we? We have 60 years of rock and roll. We exported our version of pop music and rock to the Americas. And we even borrowed Jimi Hendrix, and he became a superstar here before being returned to America, which is the subject, I think, of our next guest. I'm absolutely delighted that on the show now is BBC Radio 2 presenter and former presenter of the Old Grey Whistle Test. You'll know him, you'll know his voice. It's Bob Harris. Hello, Bob.
Good afternoon, Johnny.
Oh, Bob, thanks so much for coming on the show. This is really wonderful.
Well, I echo your words from a few moments ago, how wonderful it will be to see peace in 2024.
It's a long way off, but that's what we should pray for.
Yeah.
And you know what? I am so proud when I go abroad, wherever it might be, France or the United States, because when it comes to soft power in the world, it's not our acting, which of course is great. You know, we've exported a lot of Englishmen to Hollywood over the years, but it is our Elton Johns, it's our Beatles, it's our Stones. They might all sound American when they sing, but they're good old Brits, and the texture of the music is unmistakably British and not American.
That's true. And you have to say the Beatles were the sluice gate, weren't they? And then everything came through after them. And it's quite extraordinary, isn't it, that just a few weeks ago, we had the Beatles at number one, the top of the singles charts, and the Rolling Stones number one, the top of the album charts. I mean, and those were the first two bands to really pioneer British music across the world. But as you say, Johnny, once you move into the 70s, driven in the States by the power of FM radio, you then got this incredible, burst of British talent. Elton, Cat Stevens, Led Zeppelin, Jethro Tull, Yes, the Stones themselves, of course, each individual Beatle. It was really then an incredible time. And when you think about it, so many of those artists are still making music and really enriching our lives today.
And there's two things going on at the moment. There's Colin Hall's latest book, The Songs That the Beatles Gave Away, which you are bringing to life on a tour as well. Tell us more about the songs that the Beatles gave away.
Well, Colin and I met in 2005. Colin was the custodian at John Lennon's house, Mendips, in Menlove Avenue in Liverpool. And we became friends, Colin and I, and he took me on the Liverpool Magical Mystery Tour. We went to Strawberry Fields and Penny Lane and the Cavern. And
did you go behind the shelter in the middle of the roundabout?
Yes, indeed. We went everywhere. We went all over. We went all over Liverpool. And he took me to St. Peter's Church in Wharton in Liverpool, which is where John and Paul first met. John was playing in his band, The Quarrymen, at a church fete. And we looked into the field where the church fete took place. And the anniversary of this meeting was coming up. So I suggested to Radio 2 that we make a documentary called The Day John Met Paul. And it won us a Sony. So there was some interest in us following it up with another idea. And Colin said, there are about 30 songs, nearly 30 songs, that one or other member of the Beatles contributed to, but which the band never released themselves. Oh. These are the songs the Beatles gave away, which were recorded by Cilla Black and Peter and Gordon, Cream, because they did Badge, which George Harrison co-wrote with Eric Clapton. So we began to research the story of these songs, and I put this idea to Radio 2. We put the program out. Colin then used the research as the platform to begin work on his book, The Songs the Beatles Gave Away. And when that was published a while ago, I said to Colin, we should take this out on the road. So
beautiful.
So that's what we're doing. And we've got clips archived. a lot of sound clips, demos. I mean, it's a really full and very, very enjoyable
A
evening.
multimedia evening, that'd be lovely. Now,
Yeah.
where is it playing and what's the schedule, and is it coming to a theatre near you?
Yes, I mean, we're doing about 35 gigs in the new year. I mean, probably, may I just say, if you want to look, bobharris.org, my website, is the source of all the information. But we're doing one of my favourite venues in the country is the Stables in Lavenden in Milton Keynes, and we're playing there at the end of January. So I'm hoping we'll fill the house. And but we're all over the country. I mean, it's an amazing adventure for both of us, actually, John. It's great.
Oh, well, this is absolutely fabulous. I'm definitely going to make it down, Bob. I want to go and I'm going to go on to bobharris.org and book my tickets now, I must tell you. Now, I seem to remember in my dim and distant mind that even in their pomp, Lennon and McCartney scribed a song which the Stones covered, and that was right, in the early 60s. So it wasn't really a Blur versus Oasis rivalry. They were, even though it was the North and the South thing going on, they were mates, weren't they? And there was a Lennon McCartney song recorded and was a big hit for the Stones.
I Want to Be Your Man.
Amazing.
Yeah, which was the follow-up to Come On, which was the Stones' first single. Most of the Stones were doing covers. The Beatles were a covers band before John and Paul began to realise what an amazing chemistry existed between them. Yeah, there's the book. I mean, talk about a deep dive. It's incredible, the information in it. So the Beatles and the Stones became really good friends. And actually, we've got a wonderful clip of Paul talking about, although, the Beatles themselves recorded themselves, I Want to Be Your Man. So it doesn't actually qualify as the song the Beatles gave away.
Right.
But nevertheless, Paul tells us a great, great story about bumping into, Mick and Keith were going past him. He was in Charing Cross Road. So I think it would have been late 63 or mid 63. And Mick and Keith were going past in the taxi. And Paul saw them and sort of hailed the taxi down. And they were traveling in the back of the taxi. And Mick was saying to Paul, "You got a song?" I mean, everybody was saying to John and Paul at the time, "Have you got a song?" And Paul said, yeah, actually, I think I might have it. And he gave them "I Want to Be Your Man."
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
so... Yeah.
Which really does sound... I mean, you could imagine the Beatles singing it, but it's got that sort of a Mick Jagger kind of thing going on about it. It's kind of...
Yes, it does.
It's more raucous than the early Beatles, isn't it? It's a bit more, brusque with the ladies.
Yeah.
He's on the pull, Mick, in a way that John and Paul, they sort of reined it in a little bit because Brian Epstein was looking after their image, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. And he was looking after a lot of other artists who benefited from the songs the Beatles gave away. I mean, obviously, Cilla Black, Billy J. Kramer, The Foremost. We've got, Johnny, an absolutely wonderful demo of Step Inside Love, which Paul wrote for as the opening for her television series in the late 60s. And when he'd written it for her, and they got together with George Martin. They went into a little studio, she said, in Bond Street, just to record a very basic demo. She was standing there with, wearing a pair of glasses. She got the lyrics in front of her. For the first time, she was singing the song. And we've got the demo, and we play the demo on stage. And honestly, it's absolutely beautiful. It really is. I mean, I think Cilla was an underrated singer. Because obviously later, Surprise, Surprise and Blind Date and the other things that she did. But when she first started, when she first came down to London with the Beatles in 63, they all came down to Denmark Street. And Paul gave her a song called Love of the Loved, which she went into Abbey Road to record. So they were all quite a big, they're a big family. And Brian, directed them towards London. They'd met up with Dick James. Denmark Street was the home of all the music publishing companies, and then just round the corner from there was Charing Cross Road, where there was all the instrument shops in Charing Cross Road.
Yeah.
So it was the perfect sort of landing spot for the Beatles when they came down to London.
It's an amazing thing when you think about the massive cultural impact that they've created that it was actually a little cottage industry in a couple of streets in London. Oh yeah, we're going past the trumpet shop. Let's go and buy a trumpet.
It kind of was like
let's go and conquer America. You know, it's just mind blowing. But you know, you just mentioned there about Cilla Black being underrated, and you know, obviously she had a great variety career, very talented television presenter, a lovely, lovely personality, and a career that you know lasted for 50 years. Very, very sadly, no longer with us. But she wasn't underrated by the greatest songwriters of the 20th century. And there I was thinking that was a Burt Bacharach song, Step Inside Love, but it's a Macca song.
Yes, it is. Yeah. In fact, the other one, so Love of the Loved was the first, but then soon after that, John and Paul, and actually it was more John this time than Paul, wrote It's For You for her. And that is you listen to that record now and it still absolutely stands up. It's a beautiful single. So, you know, one or two of the others, you know, Mary Hopkin. I tell a lovely story on stage actually about, because Mary and I have known one another for years and years and years. And she comes from the same little mining village in South Wales where my dad grew up.
Right.
And so I tell a little story about Mary, and we play Goodbye. We have an interview conversation with Mary, and we play Goodbye, which was the follow-up to Those Were the Days. And it's amazing that this young lass from South Wales was signed by the Beatles and then was the person to knock Hey Jude off the top of the charts with her first ever single.
Oh.
I mean, that in itself is an amazing story.
But, you know, the South Wales thing is not unusual. I mean, there we go. It's not unusual. I didn't mean that. No pun intended. There we go. I don't just throw this together. Tom Jones. Tom Jones as well came from that. I mean, is it a stereotype to say it's a singing tradition, that the Welsh love a sing-song? Or, I mean, is that a genuine thing?
It's a genuine thing. Of course it is, Johnny. I mean, when you think of the Welsh choirs.
Yeah.
The voices of the Welsh harmonies are just absolutely magnificent.
Yeah.
And I think that's the word that described magnificent. My dad used to sing around the house all the time.
Lovely.
And I used to love listening to him singing. You know, he had a rich baritone voice. And it's a tradition, isn't it, in Wales?
Is it still a tradition? Is it still going on?
Well, I'm not that qualified to say because I don't spend enough time down there now. But instinctively, I would say yes. I think the choirs still exist, and certainly the communities still exist. And
yes.
I think that's very important, yeah.
Wonderful. So, Bob, can you just tell us a little bit more about the span of the tour when it starts, how much a pressure you're under to do it in terms of days? You know, do you get a couple of days off, or are you on the road with the band the whole way? I mean, how many dates have you got, and when does it finish?
It's a road trip.
Wow.
We go back on the road again. I think it's on the 12th of January. And what we're doing is we're putting gigs together at the weekends mostly.
Right.
Because I've got my country show on
that's
Radio
right.
2 on Thursday. So we have to obviously be back for me to build and prepare that show. But so we're mostly on the road at the weekends. And there are a lot of dates. The tour goes right through until mid-May. So rather than try and give you loads right now, it's better if you just go onto the site and have a look there.
bobharris.org. That's where we're going to go. Bob, I'm definitely coming, and I would say to each of our dear listener and viewer to do so. What a pleasure it's been, and what an interesting show it's going to be. Bob, thank you so much for joining us here on Talk TV. I wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.